Hey guys, today's video is a little bit different than other videos I've made. This video has nothing to do with anything else I do on this channel. I'm not speaking right now as Gideon stuff, this is just Gideon. A lot of you will probably not find this video super pertinent, maybe, so feel free to skip it. I'm not going to edit this video, I'm not going to monetize this video, I don't want to make anything off this video. Why am I making it? Maybe because I just feel like ranting, and maybe it'll connect with some fellow New Mexicans who might see this. So I'm from New Mexico. I love this state. Absolutely love this state. I'm very proud to be a New Mexican. I was born in Colorado, but my parents, my dad was from New Mexico when my parents moved here when I was 18 months old. So I like to tell people I may not have been born in New Mexico, but I got here as fast as I could. And I love the landscape. I love the cultures in this state. Like a lot of New Mexicans, if asked, I would probably identify as a New Mexican first and an American second. But this state has some issues. And a lot of them are probably related. You know, poor education, high poverty rate, and the thing we're going to be talking about today, crime. So a lot of you will know that back in September, my truck was broken into. And the guy stole some cash out of my glove box. He stole my field bag full of my geology gear. And if you'll also remember, at the time, I wasn't super upset about it, right? I figured maybe he needed it more than I did. Maybe this was someone in need. Nothing he stole, really put me out that bad. I filed an online police report, and that was kind of it. I'm a pretty chill guy, I like to think. It takes a lot to get me riled up. But it happened again. Someone came, they broke into my truck, put a wire through the gasket on my door, opened my truck up, and they stole my replacement field bag. And that was Sunday. Today's the 17th, Tuesday. That was Sunday night that happened. And when it happened, honestly, my first response was, this is my fault, right? I should have known better. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me, right? I shouldn't have left my bag in my truck. It's my fault. It's on me. But then I realized that, no, that was my shit in my truck, in my damn driveway. And the way I came to this realization was by talking to the police and my neighbors. So, like I said, the first time I filed an online police report. Second time I came out, saw my truck been broke into, and I was like, screw this. I called the cops. And the lady on the line told me, we prefer you file an online report for this. If you want an officer to come out, I can send one, but our response time is typically 20 to 40 minutes. And I said, okay, well, what about if it was an emergency? What's your response time? She said, it's still about 20 to 40 minutes. We'll come back to that. So I start filling out this online report, and as I'm doing that, I'm kind of cleaning up my truck. He threw everything everywhere, made a whole mess of the thing. And as I'm cleaning it up, I see something weird on the floorboard. Pick it up, 2 fingers. It's this flashlight that's not mine. I figure, oh, this was left by the guy that broke in. Put it on the back seat. And if you have something that can link a perpetrator to a crime like this, they don't want you filling out the online thing. You have to call them. And so I called the non-emergency number, and they dispatched some officers. And it took me about 40 minutes to get here. The officers came. The officer told me that since I had touched a flashlight, it was worthless as evidence. And I understand, tracking someone down for a crime like this is difficult. It's a hard thing to do. I understand that, it's rough. So I'm not upset about any of that. But, I was talking to the officer, telling him everything that got stolen. I asked him, do you guys by chance have a late night patrol that goes through here? Just someone an officer just drive around the neighborhood or something? He said, I don't think we do. I said, well, could you make that happen? He said, well, I don't think we have the resources for that right now. In other words, you're on your own. And he told me, if you don't want this to happen, buy a camera. Okay. So after he left, I decided I was going to go and talk to my neighbors and see if anyone had cameras that, might have recorded what happened. A couple people had cameras, but they were on houses that were a little ways away from mine and didn't record anything. But as I was talking to my neighbors, I was hearing some interesting stories. One guy a few houses down had someone jump into his backyard last month, steal a speaker, and run off while his wife and kids were home. They just watched it through the window. Another guy had his vehicle broke into and some things stolen. And a lady down the street said that someone tried to get into their garage. They were thankfully unsuccessful, but someone tried to break into their garage. And the thing I heard from all these people was, we thought this was a nice neighborhood when we moved here. And I thought it was a nice neighborhood too, right? I don't live in a neighborhood that looks bad. Now, this is my first time living in a house in this city. When I first got here, I was living in the school dorms. And then after that, I lived in a couple apartment buildings. And when I was in the apartment buildings, there was some crime. I had some package pirates steal a couple packages from me. Heard some shooting and screaming one night. We had a drug bust there nearby one time. But yeah, at the time, I was kind of like, oh, this to be expected, right? Apartments, low income, whatever. But the crime's getting to be where it's just everywhere, right? Just everywhere. And not just... New Mexico consistently ranks in the top 3 for violent crime in the nation. We're 1, 2, or 3 every year. And those are just the crimes that get reported. A lot of crimes in Mexico do not get reported because sometimes people are involved in things that they'd rather the police not know about, so they just don't want to mess with the police. Another thing is a lot of people, even law-abiding citizens in Mexico, don't trust the police very much. And that's not great, right? I don't know a single native New Mexican who hasn't personally been affected or known someone who's been affected by violent crime, right? I can't think of any off the top of my head. It's so prolific. And again, the stuff that was stolen from me, one thing that was stolen was my original Cold Steel SRK was in my bag, which I miss. But everything that was stolen was replaceable. This is not going to ruin my life, this robbery. It's not going to ruin my life. I still have my truck, still got, good stuff. But it's kind of the principle. It's the violation of someone breaking into my vehicle twice. That's kind of worrisome to me. And to be honest with you, I'm fucking pissed. And, we've got crime, it seems like from every level. Gangs in New Mexico are a pretty big thing. We've got a lot of homeless people that commit crime. We've even got cartel violence, right? Again, there's a lot of problems with a lot of this. Poor education, poverty, problems with our judicial system, systematic issues in our institutions, not enough funding for programs that we need, neglect of the lower class. A lot of things can stack up and lead to these problems. Growing up, I remember growing up like, it just kind of was what it was. All this crime and stuff, right? I just kind of accepted it as just kind of a fact. And it wasn't until I started talking to friends who didn't grow up in New Mexico and stuff that I was realizing like, oh, that's not normal, right? And there's always been kind of I've been in a couple of scrapes and things with people, just trying to live my life, right? I've had guns pulled on me. I've had knives pulled on me. I know a lot of people who have. I know people have been shot, stabbed, beaten. Some people have died. And it's, like I said, it was something that I just kind of always assumed was the way things were. Which is wrong. Someone's pulling up. and pause the video real quick. Oh, wait. They're driving by. When I first came to school down here, there was a little seminar that we had. I think it was required to attend. But basically, the theme of it was how to avoid getting kidnapped and sex trafficked by the cartel. Or anyone, I guess. And yeah, that left, that left an impression on a lot of people. And that year I had a friend who she was a real tiny girl, like less than 5 foot, less than 100 pounds. And she didn't have a car, so whenever she needed to go somewhere, she would call me and I'd drive her places or walk her places. And I always thought, yeah, that's smart, right? There are people around who would prey on people who appear weak, right? But I also thought in the back of my mind, and I never told her this, but there was always that thought in the back of my mind, like, if a van pulls up and 5 guys jump out, what the fuck am I going to do? Right? I'm going to be dead. And again, just having someone else there is oftentimes enough of a deterrent. But, at the time, I think I've talked about this before on the channel, I took some knife self-defense classes. This was during that year. And it was because I was living in the dorms. I wasn't allowed to have a gun or anything. And I was like, if I ever need to defend myself, it might be handy to know how to use a pocket knife. That's something I have with me all the time. Might be handy to know how to use that to defend myself. And I'm not a knife fighter. Like, I did not study enough in that class to call myself a martial artist. But that's a mentality you have, right? And after this whole thing with the robbery went down, one of my roommates, he actually told me, he's like, you know what you should do? He says, you should just wait up, and when this guy comes, shoot him. And I am a gun owner. I'm the only gun owner in the house. I do have a gun that I bought specifically for home defense. But I don't want to do that, right? I know some guys who really hope that someone breaks into their house so they can kill someone. I think that's a really, really weird position to have. I think that's really weird because I don't want to kill anyone, right? And hoping for that kind of trouble is just stupid. Also, I don't want to be involved in a self-defense shooting because some of the things we've had going on in New Mexico recently regarding guns have been a little bit screwy, right? Our governor tried to just say that she can cancel the Second Amendment whenever she needs to. So I'm afraid that if something like that were to happen, I might get in more trouble than is worth. And, you feel like you're between a rock and a hard place. I have an attorney friend, he's a prosecutor here in the area. And I was talking to him one time, and he was talking about how one of his biggest problems serving here in New Mexico is that some of the legal stuff we have going on is just odd. And I don't understand all the legal jargon and lingo, but he's talking about how a lot of people, he deals with a lot of domestic violence cases. And he's talking about how there's a thing in New Mexico where basically a prosecutor can have a post-trial interview with people that are about to be on trial, which he says is used mainly just to intimidate people into not wanting to go through with different things, which is really bizarre. But the other thing too is a lot of people just don't report a lot of these crimes, and I've been guilty of that too. There's been, I'll tell this story. When I was in high school, I had this friend whose stepdad was absolutely off his rocker. And me and this friend, one time, we were going to go to this event in Taos. So I go pick this friend up, get to his house, and it's winter time, so it gets dark a little bit earlier. So it's dark, and I'm walking up to the front door, and I look. They had a bunch of cars in their yard. And I'd called ahead, and told this kid's parents, everything, hey, we're going to be doing this. The whole thing was planned out. And I'm walking up to the front door, and I notice out in the corner of my eye, it's dark and stuff, I see his stepdad just kind of standing behind one of the vehicles. And I was going to go say hi, and I was like, oh, I bet he's taking a leak. They actually didn't have indoor plumbing. So I'm just going to leave him alone. So I walk up the steps to the door of their trailer. I start to knock, and I hear this click behind me. I turn around, and the stepdad, I'm going to try to avoid using names, but stepdad, he's got his gun leveled at me. I jump back, I'm like, what the hell are you doing? He's like, Gideon? He's like, thank goodness you turned around. I about fucking killed you. I was a 15-year-old kid. I'm shaking, right? I am terrified. There's a grown-ass man holding me at gunpoint on his front step. I didn't know what to do. And so he's like playing it off like a joke, hey, whatever, good thing you turned around. He could have killed you. Finally my friend comes out and, we drive off and he's like, you seem tense. I'm like, dude, your stepdad almost killed me. Did I call the police or anything on that? No. We're out in the middle of nowhere. I know the police aren't going to come out there, right? This guy does this thing to everybody. He's threatening people with guns. He steals things from people in the community. We all know it. Everyone knows that it's just going to come down to one day someone's going to lose their shit and kill him. And that's the wrong mentality to have, right? That's the wrong mentality to have. But there is a sense of powerlessness, like you're not going to get any help from the police, right? I'll tell you a story about this truck. This used to be my dad's truck. I bought this from him when I graduated high school. And when it was his truck, he's a mobile veterinarian, so he would practice out of this truck. And so he had like this big box in the bed that had a bunch of things in it. He had all kinds of stuff in here, his equipment, drugs and things. He was in Albuquerque one time, and it was stolen. Someone punched the lock out with a big old screwdriver, and they took off. My dad called the police. He said, hey, my truck is gone. The police said, we're short-staffed, and to be honest with you, this is like the 10th stolen vehicle call we've gotten this hour. We'll make note of it, but, your truck's gone, dude. And that was a devastating blow to my dad because that's his livelihood that just got taken. Miraculously, the truck was recovered. The guy who stole it used it to rob a bunch of garages. He'd drive up people's garages or houses. He'd break into the garage, load the truck up with stuff, and then he'd take off. And he loaded up on something, passed out on the side of the road. He injected himself with, my dad was looking through the drugs, with a drug called Ludilice, which is an ovarian stimulant for cattle. So I don't even know what the fuck kind of trip that guy had. I bet it was wild. But, the truck was recovered, which was miraculous. And the thing is this stuff becomes so common. When I was a teenager, I ran around a lot in Espanola, right? And some of my closest friends from Espanola, some of them might even be watching this video, I've got some really good memories from Espanola. There's some wonderful people there. I love the place. But it can be scary, right? It can be really scary. And, when you're a teenager, you don't take that stuff quite as seriously. When I was younger, I was in a couple situations that I shouldn't have been in. And I was lucky enough that I had people who loved me and were looking out for me, and people who kind of protected me and kept me out of a lot of bad stuff. A lot of people aren't that lucky, right? But again, when you're a teenager, you don't think that much about this stuff. I know some real bad hombres, right? Guys that are reformed criminals, guys that have killed people. And when I was a kid, it's like, oh, that's badass. And to this day, like, I'm still friends with him. I respect them, right? But they'll tell you too, like, it's not badass, right? It's an issue. It's a bad issue. No matter what drives you into that kind of stuff. And this isn't just a problem in the cities, right? The cities do have a big problem. Albuquerque is a mess. There's a place in Albuquerque that locals refer to as the war zone. I've got a couple friends that have lived there in the past. I've been there. Yeah, it's a scary, scary place. But it's not just an issue with the cities, right? Even out in the country, this stuff happens. Back in 2017, northern New Mexico, a kid just kind of lost his marbles, murdered his whole family. This was a kid that my grandma taught in school. Lost his marbles, killed his whole family. He fled the scene, ended up murdering a good friend of my parents, stealing his vehicle, driving to Abiquiu where he killed someone else before being arrested. This stuff happens at my family ranch. We've had people come onto the ranches, try and steal equipment, try and steal vehicles. And when you're in the country, you kind of have that knowledge that you're far away, right? It's going to take the cops a long time to get to you. So you're kind of on your own, right? And so someone's out there stealing your stuff. You go shoot a shot in the air. If they don't leave, it's going to go where it's going to go. But in the city, that response time is just so much worse. And I think it does breed for a lot more bad shit to go down. And again, there's I'm not anti-cop. I know a lot of great cops. But some of our systems just don't work. Some of our systems just don't work, and they push people to do things that I don't think people would otherwise do. And again, this robbery, I can replace everything that was taken. But the fact that my vehicle was broken into twice, that violation of my personal space twice, pisses me off. It pisses me off. And what's next? They're going to break into my house, right? I don't want that to be a situation. And, it's not a new thing. Crime is crime is crime. It's been around. There's a story, my great-grandma, this was a long time before I was born. I think my dad was a kid when this happened. She was home at the ranch alone. Her husband and son were off working. This guy pulls in a real nice car, and he gets out, and he knocks on the door, she opens the door, and he just kind of starts verbally abusing her, and he's drunk. He's obviously drunk. So she closes the door on him. Well, he starts kicking at the door, and he's kicking and screaming, I'm going to get in there, I'm going to get in there. She's obviously pretty scared. So she goes, and she gets her husband's pistol, and she opens the door, and she points at this guy's face, and she says, leave or I'll shoot you. He said, just go ahead and shoot me. I don't think you'll do it. Besides, I've got nothing left to live for. He starts getting agitated and more aggressive. My great-grandma says, okay. Leave or I'm going to start shooting your car. Oh, please, ma'am, don't. She fired a warning shot over the hood. He ran, got in his car, and drove off. And that's kind of an amusing story in hindsight. But, this stuff has happened for a long time, right? I don't want to keep this video going forever. There's a lot of stories I can tell about things that have happened to me, things that have happened to people I know. And I'm sure every New Mexican can kind of relate. And, a lot of us feel like the system is against us. A lot of us feel like we can't trust the system. And that's the problem, right? That's the problem. And what's the solution? Get your concealed carry permit. Learn how to defend yourself. Learn some first aid, I guess. But you don't want to have to fend for yourself, right? And, no one wants to do that. That's about all I've got to say. I'm just, kind of pissed. And, yeah, it's just not an ideal situation. But, yeah, just wanted to rant a little bit.